Welcome back to 30 Days of Persuasion Plays with me, Paul Macetta. Before we start today's lesson, I want to ask you to try not to think of a pink elephant. I want you to try, with everything you have in your mind, to not think of a pink elephant. Go ahead and do it. So what happens? What happens is you can't help but to think of the pink elephant. And the reason for that is because the human mind thinks in pictures. That's how we think. That's how we make sense of the world. Now, in case you didn't know, another classic NLP lesson is that there are three ways that people make sense of the world. There are three representational systems that people use to make sense of the world. First is visual, which is they make sense of the world by the way they see things. Next are the auditory people, which make sense of the world by the way that they hear things. And then last are the kinesthetic people, who make sense of the world based on the way things feel to them. Now, granted, most people will use one representational system most of the time, but we all use a mixture of all three of them at different times. However, every single person on the planet uses visualization, thinks in pictures. And so if I tell you not to think of a pink elephant, you cannot help but conjure up the image of the pink elephant in your mind, regardless of whether you're a kinesthetic person or an auditory thinker. And so what you want to do is use this to your advantage when you're trying to influence, persuade, or communicate a powerful message to other people. So today, I got two tips for you. Tip number one is that you want to paint very vivid pictures for people when you are communicating with them. You want to tell them about the time and the place and the environment and the weather and the music that was playing, or the scent that was in the air, or the time of year it was. And the reason why you want to do that is because that will ultimately make your message resonate a lot better with them. Because here's the thing, because we all think in pictures anyway, if you start communicating with people and you don't use that to your advantage, they're going to conjure up their own images in their mind anyway. That's just how the mind works. So you're sitting there, you're communicating a message to them, and if you're not painting very clear, vivid, visual pictures of what's going on, they're going to come up with their own pictures. And those images and pictures might not be the ones that you want them to conjure up in their mind, because it could create a completely different scenario of what actually is happening. And so you want to be able to pick specific visual details that you use when you communicate with somebody. The second thing that you want to use are my two favorite go-to tools, and they are metaphors and analogies. So an analogy is when you take a certain situation and you reframe it. You take that situation and you explain it to a person in a way that's different than what's actually taking place, which causes them to look at it, right? Again, because they're thinking visually, it causes them to look at it in a different way, and it helps drive home your message a lot more clearly. The second thing you want to use is the metaphor. And what the metaphor is just a way of rephrasing. So the analogy is a sense of reframing, and the metaphor is a way of rephrasing what's going on to create an image in someone's mind. So for example, one of the programs that I sell is a very powerful program. It's called the Authority Code. I talk about authority in another video. Authority is very powerful in influence and persuasion, because studies have shown, and human nature tells us, that when people are in the presence of an authority, they're more likely to comply with what the authority tells them to do, simply because they are an authority. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you what's wrong with you and writes you your prescription, you don't question the doctor. You go and get your prescription filled, right? Unless you have a life-threatening disease, you're not going to go get a second opinion. You're going to trust what the doctor said because he or she is the authority. And so I created a whole program on this, which reveals a 4-stage process for creating authority. And when people ask me, what does this product do? What's it going to give me? What's it going to help me with? How is it going to help me? I tell them that having authority is like having a license to tell people what to do and have them happily comply. It's like having a license to tell people what to do. That's a powerful metaphor, right? Because a license is something that represents the fact that you have exclusive permission to do something, right? When you have a license to drive, you have exclusive permission to drive your car anywhere you want. Well, imagine having a license to tell people what to do and then have them happily comply. That's a powerful metaphor, creates a very powerful image in your mind of what my product can do. And so the point is that when you're communicating with people, at the end of the day, you have a message that you want to communicate. And the meaning of all communication is the response that it elicits. And so what that means is regardless of what your intentions may be, regardless of what your core message may be, the meaning of that message is only determined by how the other person responds. If they respond favorably or they respond in a way that's conducive to what that message was in your mind, then that was the meaning of the message. If they respond in a completely different way, then that was the meaning of the message. And so because the meaning of all communication is the response that it elicits, you have to do your very best to make sure that that message communicates and elicits the exact response that you want. And because people think in pictures, you have to utilize that to your advantage by, one, using very visual details when you communicate with people, and two, by having an arsenal of metaphors and analogies in place, ready to go, locked and loaded, so that if you're sensing that a person isn't understanding where you're coming from, you can utilize the metaphors and analogies to get them to see things in a different way. If you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe, and leave a comment.